ask you if Tennessee is actually the best team in the sport, not only ranked number 1 and undefeated, but also the best team in the sport. Shouldn't your answer be maybe as opposed to no?
It is no. When every
How do you know? How do you know that?
Well, here's the thing. I can't possibly know that, and no human can certainly know that.
Good. Then you should
when there are your precious computers that you love to reference on every single show, and every single one of them, which can dive into data on levels that a single human cannot, show that Auburn is by far the best team in the country, then that's why I will agree with them in that analysis here in the first week of January and say that, yes, Auburn is the best team in the land.
I was wrong. Hey there, Gary Parrish. Welcome back. CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting dodo birds. Leaky Black Matt Norlander is here with me. If you watch it on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. The place to start, clearly, it's inside the O-Dome down in Gainesville, where Florida beat Tennessee's brains in last night. Final score 73-43. Gators over the Vols. According to Jared Burson, the inventor of research, this was the first 30-point loss by an AP number 1 team since UCLA, back then led by second-best coach in program history, John Wooden, since they beat Houston, number 1 Houston, by 32 in the 1968 national semifinals. Norlander, I won't ask you if you've ever seen a number 1 team get beat like that, because I know you haven't. You weren't alive in 1968. And thank God you weren't alive in 1968, because I don't know how much you know about history and stuff, but 1968 was a pretty awful year. And not just for the Houston Cougars. Like Elvin Hayes losing the final 2 games of his college career, relatively speaking, not that big of a deal on the list of awful things in 1968. So I don't even want to ask you about that. Instead, let me just ask you, what do you make of these Vols and these Gators coming out of the blowout inside the O-Dome, where the Gators beat the Vols' brains right out of their head? Oh, buddy, if you're talking, I can't hear a word you're saying.
You got me now. There we go. How could you?
Hey, welcome to the podcast. Congrats. Thanks for being here.
How could you not consider Tennessee to be the best team in the sport? You must certainly still think that this is the best team in college basketball, right? This has got to be. Got to be.
I think at the time it was said it was worthy of being considered, given that they had big wins on the road and strong computer numbers and the only team in the country with a 0 in the loss column. I think it was a reasonable point to make when it was made. I don't think after watching somebody lose by 30 points on a Tuesday night, you'd be considering them as truly a candidate to be considered the best team in the country on Wednesday morning.
You seem so dismissive of my opinion that they weren't, in the similar way that Wally Zerbiak and Chris Walker were dismissive of the possibility of Marquette not winning last night.
True.
You gave them a lot of grief on the TV set.
That's right.
I'm going to give you a little dose of your own medicine here to start.
No, it's completely fine. I wasn't offended by somebody thinking anybody other than Tennessee could be the best team in the country. I was just sort of confused by the idea that people could be so certain that it couldn't possibly, the best team in the country couldn't possibly be the undefeated and top-ranked Tennessee Vols. But, buddy, that was a reasonable conversation on, say, Sunday. It didn't feel nearly as reasonable on Wednesday morning.
Here it is.
Here
it comes.
I was wrong. That was a tough game for the Vols. That was a tough game for the Vols. They ran into something down there.
Man, oh man, what a mutilation that was. Yes, it was the 3rd largest loss by a number 1 team in history. I actually put this out before Jared Burson, but it's fine, whatever. Kentucky over St. John's by 41 back in 1951. Shouts to 51, the year my father was born. My dad was all of, I don't know, this is looking like 40, 45, 48 days old when it happened. Kentucky beat St. John's in a number 1 versus number 2 matchup, 81-40. So that's still the record here. And then UCLA over Houston, as you mentioned, back in 68, that was a 32-point margin. And then until last night, the most recent example of a blowout was not that long ago, 2024. That's right, less than a year, when Iowa State destroyed Houston, which was number 1 in the AP rankings when they played in the Big 12 tournament. That was a 28-point margin. I do wonder if the loss for Tennessee is going to be a kind of thing where I don't think it'll have an impact on the team. I don't think this is going to be like my Bears losing to the Commanders on the Hail Mary and then everything just going terribly awry after that. I don't think it'll be anything like that. But I do wonder if the perception of Tennessee gets altered because it was such a drastic and dramatic loss. They were down 12-0 with like 12:30 to go in the first half. They couldn't get a bucket. They were held to 0.64 points per possession. Zakai Ziegler, Chaz Lanier only had 10 apiece. They were 4 of 29 from 3. What's wild is that Florida was in command of this game, and Walter Clayton Jr. and Will Richard each only had 7 points. Florida didn't even shoot well from 3-point range, and they just dog walked them to the max in this one. So a big time W for the Gators. I think I make a lot more of it in Florida doing what it did here. It's unbeatable at home. It's yet to win a game by fewer than 18 points in the O-Dome. The O-Dome is officially back here. And congrats to that program and its fan base that had not seen. Shouts to our CBS Sports research team on this, by the way. Florida had not beaten a number 1 team since it defeated Ohio State in the 2007 national title game.
I moved Florida up to number 4 in the top 25 and 1. Dropped Tennessee
down
to number 7.
I can't hear you right now.
Are you being serious?
I still can't. I go ahead. Are you there?
Of course I'm here. You really can't hear a word I'm saying.
Jump in. Help me here. I want to make sure it's not me. I just want to make sure it's not me.
Hold on now. You really can't hear anybody?
Go ahead, GP.
Oh,
wow. I've just been talking like I always do.
All right, I got you again.
Oh, this is
an incredible show right now. Keep going.
As I was saying, I moved Florida up to number 4 in the top 25 and 1 after its latest dominant win. Tennessee dropped down to number 7. You mentioned there the Gators are unbeatable inside the O-Dome. Do you mean that? Do you mean that literally? Do you think they will not lose a game at home this season?
Okay. Bring up the schedule. See who it was the toughest game they got. They got Missouri next, they'll win it. Texas, they'll win it. Georgia, they'll win it. Vandy, they'll win it. South Carolina, Oklahoma. Jeez. Yeah, I'm gonna say it. Yeah, they won't lose at home. Florida will go undefeated at home this season.
Would that make them the best team in the history of college basketball to ever be coached by a person facing a Title IX investigation?
Yes, it certainly would. And as Florida continues to win, as we wait on that update, it becomes, all the more interesting, frankly. And is Florida going to get around to making a judgment on this before we get out of the season, or is it going to try and play out the clock here? Wait and see on the Todd Golden stuff. But as you bring this up, GP, I did not realize. So they got Tennessee at home and they destroy them. But Kentucky is not a return, which I know Florida fans were a little irked on because that's traditionally like a really, really good SEC rivalry. But Kentucky does not make the return trip to Gainesville. They don't have Auburn in their building, and they don't have. We got the Tennessee home and home. Who else is real? And they don't have Bama in their building, so Bama doesn't go. So I think there's a really healthy chance that they don't lose at home.
Should the Title IX investigation be more of a topic of conversation? Last night I was in studio. We were literally on air, like live, during part of the Florida-Tennessee game. So I'm not listening to every word, but is it something that's being talked about within the broadcast? I bring it up because in our Slack channel last night among CBS Sports college basketball folks, it got a little spicy with some people saying, hey, congrats, Florida, on having a wonderful college basketball team, but you also are being led by a coach who has been accused of some pretty serious allegations. Is this something that should be more of a national story than it certainly has been so far? Because just speaking for us, we're two people who talk about college basketball at least 3 times a week. I think we discuss this on the day the story broke or shortly thereafter and have really never discussed it again.
I think it's been brought up on one show since, but we can acknowledge that's happening. I don't know what else we're going to do to update the story. Like there's no news. We're waiting on the Title IX investigation to wrap and for Florida to determine what it's going to do or not going to do in regard to Todd Golden. But I will say the longer that Florida continues to do this and be a top 5 kind of team, top 10 kind of team, and win bid like this, and Golden isn't or can't speak out about it, it certainly is making for what feels like the 4th or 5th season in a row a very awkward story, as you have a prominent coach, a prominent player tied to obviously a story that is not so good.
Last thing on this stuff, I mentioned I moved Florida up to number 4 in the top 25 and 1 drop Tennessee down to number 7. I did move Auburn up to number 1. They've got the most quadrant 1 victories in the country. It's an easy case to make. But earlier in the week when we were discussing who's the best team in the country, you did go with Auburn, in part, not entirely, I don't want to speak for you, but in part because like you can look at the computer numbers and they'll all tell you Auburn's the best team in the country. As I think you know, overnight last night, yep, Duke did move to number 1 at KenPom. Does that move the needle for you at all? Are you willing to say that it's not clearly Auburn the best team in the country anymore? It might actually be John Shire's Blue Devils.
Potentially. Duke is number 1 at KenPom. Duke is number 1 at Evan Mia. Torvik has Houston, Auburn, Duke 1, 2, 3. KenPom and Evan both have Duke, Auburn, then Houston in that order. So it has gotten tight. And part of the reason why was, we'll get to the Tigers in a second, but they allowed Texas to really claw back late. They were in control of that game until the final 4 minutes, and Texas was trying to pull out an escape there, but it couldn't get it done. So we do have a developing race over who the best team in the country is. And credit to Houston, by the way, real quick, I mentioned for the Cougars, they won on Monday. They have not lost since November. They haven't allowed a team to score better than 51 points in that span as well. Lo and behold, Kelvin Sampson, really good coach. Houston, really good program, just kind of lurking just a little bit there. Now, they haven't played a top 40 team in that span, but now, as you know, we are well into league play here, from Duke to Auburn to Houston to potentially still Tennessee to Florida, on down the line, Alabama, take your pick. Who's going to be the best team in the country? We have a good race developing. We'll see how it changes over the next few weeks overall. By the way, Tennessee, O-Dome's been a house of horrors. I will note that the past 3 games they've played there, they have been ranked 1, 2, and 6. The 30-point defeat last night. In 2023, they lost by 13, and in 2021, they lost 75-49. So they have not had any kind of success against that program in that building. Congrats to Florida on the win. And a quick trivia time.
Okay, let's go.
Tennessee no longer has the longest win streak in the country. I wonder if this might have come up on the desk or in the bullpen last night. Do you know the team that has the longest winning streak in the country now? It is a mid-major.
Oklahoma City Thunder.
The exact opposite of a mid-major. Might they be like the second best team in the NBA right now?
Maybe the best. I don't know. They're just the only team I can think of with a long winning streak.
What do you know about the Tritons?
I don't know anything about the Tritons. Should I?
UC San Diego has won 11 games in a row.
How did they do that?
Well, LaSalle, James Madison, Toledo, something called Laverne, UC Santa Barbara, Cal State Bakersfield, Idaho, Utah State. What? Utah State's only loss is to UC San Diego.
I didn't think anybody would ever beat Utah State. How did that happen?
San Diego, of course. A lot of road wins in here, too. Cal State Fullerton. So congrats to UC San Diego, now the owner of the longest win streak in the country. Big time showing by the Gators last night. They lost 106-100 to Kentucky on the road in the best offensive game we've seen this season, and then they turn around and are able to completely shut down Tennessee, getting 43 points. That was super weird stuff, but we'll see how much this winds up actually mattering in the big picture.
Do you think that's going to be something we see routinely in the SEC? Like you lose a game and then you just pound a top 10 team the very next game. I think it's going to happen 5 times this season.
I think that's possible. I got asked on HQ last night by Kiana Martin, will every SEC team endure at least one double-digit loss? I do think that is possible. Yes. Now I don't think most teams plenty of teams will probably lose by 15 or 20 points, but if we take the projected top 5-6 teams in the league, will any of them face a loss like Tennessee, say 25 or more points? Probably not. But I do think it's definitely on the table that every single team in the league has at least one loss of at least 10 points.
So big win for Florida. Now the Gators travel to Arkansas for a road game this weekend at Bud Walton. Tough loss for Tennessee. Now the Vols travel to Austin. It's Rick Barnes going back to Texas. That game also this weekend. Up next, we got a new game. It's called Stay or Hit, presented by Chumba Casino. I'm going to explain it in a second, but first, let's get a word from our partners. All right, very excited. Now it's time for Stay or Hit. It's a segment brought to you by Chumba Casino. Whether you're chilling at home or on the move, play for the chance to redeem some serious prizes with Chumba Casino. Norlander, today we're playing Stay or Hit, national championship contenders. And let's start with the team that got a big win Tuesday night. We've already referenced them. They moved to number 1 at KenPom. It's the Duke Blue Devils. They beat Pitt 76-47. Yep. I know you think Duke is a national title contender.
Yes.
Tell me why as of January 8th, 2025.
Okay, so you're hitting me on this, though.
You just follow my instructions. I just want you to do exactly what I tell you to do. And what I just told you to do
No. I'm going to needlessly complicate this. Hit me on Duke being a national title contender. All the better. It doesn't have any issues against Pitt whatsoever. Cooper Flagg was tremendous. And yes, the fact that I'll tell you what, the defense continuing, when I went there in the preseason, the staff was extremely optimistic about the chances for Duke to have a truly elite defense. I wrote about it in a feature I did heading into the year. Lo and behold, look up. This is the number 1 defense in the country, and it's doing so with starting Cooper Flagg, a freshman, Con Knippel, a freshman, Kaman Malawach, a freshman. Now, they're all very good defensive players, but that is an uncommon combination that you would have a team this good on defense relying on this many first-year players. Hit me. Duke's a national title contender.
Okay, now it's time to play Stay or Hit. Do you want to stay on Duke or hit on Alabama? And that means keep Duke as your title favorite or replace Duke.
Oh. Give me, first of all, I don't want GP to stay. If you're watching, he is frozen on. His video is frozen on me. I will hit on Alabama because that is my preseason number 1 team. So I will stick with the Crimson Tide. A very close call overall. I will take Alabama over Duke to do it. If you're watching on YouTube, this is just an all-time show right now. Parrish's video has frozen. You're back. You're back. I'm hitting on Alabama. Over Duke. Amazing, dude. All right.
I've had the Wi-Fi here is going out. They're doing something right outside the hotel. It's just been banging.
It feels like this happens every year, by the way. It feels like they've been working on something just outside the hotel 7 years in a row.
I mean, Luigi just shot the CEO right outside, and ever since then, they've just been banging. Now, I don't know what they're doing out there, but they just been banging nonstop. I'm now connected to my trusty iPhone.
Okay. By the way, if you have not already, a reminder, please vote for this show for the best basketball podcast.
Yeah, I mean, look at what more do you want? What more do you want? All right. We're playing Stay or Hit, presented by Chumba Casino. And my God, I'm certain they wanted this to go more smoothly than this. I'm not in charge of
hit me.
I'm not in charge of the Wi-Fi. All right. Remind me. I asked you, do you want to stay on Duke or hit on Alabama? Which means, do you want to keep Duke as your title contender or replace them with the Crimson Tide?
For the 3rd time, Alabama hit me.
Okay. Now, do you want to stay on Alabama or do you want to hit on Florida?
I'm going to stay on Alabama.
Do you want to stay on Alabama or hit on Iowa State? I know the answer to this one.
I'm staying.
I know the answer.
No hesitation.
I know the answer to that one. All right. Do you want to stay on Alabama?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, look at that. Look at the way the first episode of Stay or Hit's turning out. Do you want to stay on Alabama or do you want to hit on Auburn?
I want to hit on Auburn. Auburn's just across the way, looking just absolutely ravishing at the bar. I'm going to hit on Auburn.
You're attracted to Auburn. That's what you're saying.
Attracted to Auburn, yes. I went to the campus last year for the first time. Definitely attracted to Auburn. Yes.
Would you leave your wife for Auburn?
No, absolutely not. No chance.
Would you have one night with Auburn if I could guarantee you your wife would never find out about it? It would just be you. It would just be you and Auburn.
We're not venturing.
It would be you and Auburn's secret. Nobody would ever know.
No, we're not venturing into the topic of infidelity. Not interested whatsoever.
Would you? Last question on this.
Mm-hmm.
Would you offer Auburn $1.5 million for one night?
I would not. I don't even have $1.5 million.
That's the good thing. You think you would always want $1.5 million. You think that, but then sometimes it can get you in trouble if you start offering it to people you shouldn't be offering it to. You know what I'm saying?
I feel where you're putting that down. But give me Auburn. Give me Auburn over Bama. Is that the end of the line? Am I hitting again?
No, I think that's the end of the line. Matt Norlander settled on Auburn. He's staying on Auburn. And that was the Stay or Hit segment brought to you by Chumba Casino. Ready to dive into some excitement? Chumba Casino is where it's at. It's free to play. So just jump right in and explore over hundreds of social casino-style games with fresh new releases every week. Play anytime, anywhere, and enjoy free daily login bonuses and an amazing welcome offer. Okay, Norlander, let's get to the Wednesday Whiparound. And can we start with Duke and that viral play I requested less than 24 hours ago? Nada, if you got Cooper Flagg's viral transition dunk, let's see it.
Quite a turnaround there. They got it right the first time. And picked off. Flagg on the attack. Look at the slam! And a foul! Oh, my!
Hey, I told you yesterday, less than 24 hours ago, I said, you know what we're missing from this? You know what we're missing from this Cooper Flagg thing? We need highlights. We need a viral highlight. And then sure enough, just a few hours later, he's given us one in a blowout victory over Pitt that helped launch the Blue Devils to #1 at KenPom. Is that the viral moment we needed to get the Cooper Flagg buzz taken to a new level?
Incredible timing by the show. Yes. Here's how I know it's a big deal. Because one, we got people in the chat saying it's a double dribble. That's not a double dribble. You're allowed to poke the ball free with one dribble on a steal, gather and dribble again. So people have already claimed that he double dribbled or traveled. Not true. And two, there is a backlash to the reaction to the dunk. Cooper Flagg has arrived. That's how I know, because people are already saying this isn't that big of a deal. Okay, sure. It's an incredible dunk. What do you want from me? We can celebrate one of the most exciting plays of the college basketball season and not have it some referendum on how we're covering it.
I had some of this.
An incredible dunk. What are we doing?
I tweeted the video and I had some of this, like the replies, like some guy. Just imagine you're sitting at home on Tuesday night and you see that. It's just like you're looking at your phone and you see that, and you are compelled to go, okay, I got to reply to this, and you go, a lot of people can, get a steal and get out in transition and make a dunk. I don't see what the big deal is. Like, do you know how miserable of a person you have to be to even have your mind go to that place? Like, I am always just fascinated by people who just consume stuff really for no other reason so that they can immediately just crap on it. Like I see stuff all the time that I'm not interested in. You know what I do? I just keep it moving. I'm not compelled to tell you whatever your favorite show is. Sucks. I'm not compelled to tell you whatever your favorite band is.
The internet, Parrish.
Sucks.
What do you want?
I know. I just don't understand it. I'm aware that it exists, but if I see somebody go, man, I really love the new Chappell Roan album. If I don't like the Chappell Roan album, I'm not compelled to jump on and be like, I can't believe you even listen to that junk. I just stay out of it. It's none of my business. Why? Who cares? And yet people some people watch that Cooper Flagg dunk and watch people get excited about the Cooper Flagg dunk and decided, I don't know what the big deal is. It looks the tall guy dunking to me. I can't. People are too much for me sometimes.
It was a hell of a play, and Duke got an easy win. They shut off Pitt's water down the stretch here. Duke was able to end the game on an 18-0 run. 18-0. Pitt did not score in the final 8 minutes of the game. Final 76-47. John Shire returned after having sickness. Flagg had another tremendous game. I'd put him second right now for National Player of the Year behind Janai Broom. We'll get to him in just a second. Flagg in this game finished with 19 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 turnovers, a steal, and a block. So another tremendous outing for him. And Duke is now it's either going to be Duke or Auburn to be the number one team probably next week. Duke's got to get away from Notre Dame at home this weekend. Should be able to be done. Auburn was able to get past Texas in a weird ending, and then they've got South Carolina on the road on Saturday. We'll see if they have issues with that, but they're looking at back-to-back road games there.
My colleague and friend Wally Zerby, former NBA All-Star, he was very wrong about Georgetown winning at Marquette last night. It was noted. But I will say Georgetown, I thought showed itself well and looked like a legitimate NCAA tournament contender. Like that, you go in Fiserv, you play them tight. After doing what they had already done, I think it sort of, even in defeat, a little bit like what I said about Florida after the loss at Kentucky. Like I walk out of that more of a believer in Florida than I was before the game. Like I'm more of a believer after a loss than I was after most of the wins. Same things with Georgetown last night. But, as that was happening, Duke was blowing out Pitt, and my colleague Wally Zerbiak, he said, right now, in this moment, Duke is the best team in the country. And I've already asked you if you think that's true, so I won't ask you again. But I will say, if you're a Duke fan, you got to be really enthusiastic about the idea that the only reason anybody's ever been skeptical of you really is because you were going to be heavily reliant on freshmen, and that can be a hard thing to do in this era of college basketball. Ask Steve Pikiell at Rutgers. But it's January 8th, and these freshmen are performing at an extremely high level. Like, if these dudes are already operating as a team at this level in early January, I mean, it's never really been a conversation. Who's the most talented team in the country? That's always been Duke in terms of, future NBA talent. It's not even close. The question is like, okay, but they're really young. How's that all going to fit together? Well, it's fitting together well. Whether you think they're the best team in the country right now, they're clearly one of the best, and they've always had more room to grow than I think most other teams, if not all other teams. If I were making future bets right now, I would have probably hoped I'd have done it a while ago, but Duke is looking like a real strong candidate. You're going to start hearing more and more people say exactly what Wally Zerbiak said last night, which is Duke's the best team in the country.
They certainly have a case, and some predictive metrics have that as the case right now here on the morning of Wednesday, January 8th. By the way, Duke's chance of going undefeated per KenPom in the ACC is 36%. We're on a time limit here. Let's squeak on through with some more stuff. Bruce Pearl, this is kind of wild to me. He became the winningest coach in Auburn history by virtue of the Tigers being able to win on the road against Texas on Tuesday night. They win 87-82. It doesn't seem like it's that long. Like I remember him, the image is him getting off the plane, getting hired at Auburn after, being a commentator for ESPN for a couple of years following, he lied to the NCAA about an investigation. Man, oh God, that's a whole lifetime ago. Aaron Kraft when he was coach at Tennessee and all this stuff. And lo and behold, he's become the greatest coach in program history and now is the winningest coach in Auburn history. They get the win. I reached out to him basically to tell him like, hey, I can't believe it's been this long. And then we got to talking about the game a little bit. He said if the game was a 42-minute game, his team would have lost. It was their worst defense they played the entire season, and didn't like the way that they finished it out there. But regardless, they did get the win on the road against an SEC team. Texas, it's Auburn, so it's semi-understandable. But like Texas is one of those teams where I don't know what they're going to be. Are they going to be the 6th best team? Or are they going to be the 13th best team in the SEC? You can't lose too many opportunities on your home floor because getting them on the road is going to be so hard in the league there. But Auburn, nonetheless, gets the win. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, or the other big game is obviously Kentucky.
I led the top 25-1 with Auburn, not because it was the biggest result of the night, because on some level it might have been the most meaningful or the easiest one to write about. That's probably why I did it at 3:00 in the morning. Mm-hmm. When you get fired for A, cheating, B, lying to the NCAA, and you subsequently are hit with a 3-year show cause penalty. I mean, we can all look back now and be like, well, of course Bruce Pearl was always going to coach in the SEC again, but it wasn't clear on the day that he was fired. I guess I always, and this is what I wrote, assumed he'd be back because he's great, and people who are great at stuff tend to get second chances, even thirds and fourths sometimes. But you don't know for sure. And even when he does get the job, it ain't the Kentucky job. It's the Auburn job. I remember going to Auburn a few months after BP got the job, and we sat together in that arena and talked, and he was just like, we'll see. He's like, the reason I took this job is because they win at everything else here. And, I think we can win at this here, but I remember vividly him saying, this is going to be harder than what I did at Tennessee. This is a harder situation than what I did at Tennessee. And yet here he is with the team that is ranked number 1 in the top 25-1, should be probably ranked number 1 in the AP poll on Monday, as long as they don't lose this weekend. And now the all-time winningest coach in program history at Auburn, which makes him not the all-time winningest coach at 2 SEC programs, but a very significant and beloved coach at 2 different SEC programs. And that's a nice, a nice thing to have achieved in your professional career.
Well, how about the fact that now Pearl did get Auburn to number 1 in the AP rankings just a few years ago. The Jabari Smith, Walker Kessler team that team got to number 1. But prior to that, it was obviously at Tennessee. There was the famous 2008 game. I think you're right. You must have been there. Number 1. Yeah. Number 1. Was it number 1 Tennessee, number 2 Memphis, or maybe
one? It was number 1 Memphis, number 2 Tennessee. A Saturday game day. Tennessee beats them at FedEx Forum, moves to number 1 in the AP poll. Plays at Vandy on that Tuesday night. I went to Nashville for that game. Okay. Vandy upset them. I saw the number 1 team in the country lose 2 times in a 4-day span.
And now just kind of interesting to see Pearl doing what he's doing at Auburn. Auburn's been so good, and Tennessee having held the number 1 ranking here. This is the 5th straight week. Just some interesting links there, and seeing how Tennessee all these years later was able to. It took some time, but Barnes was obviously the right hire after Donnie Tyndall was there for a quick minute, et cetera, but intriguing. Let's stick in the SEC. Kentucky loses at Georgia. Georgia gets its first win over a ranked Kentucky team in 18 tries, 82-69. The game took like 2 hours and 36 minutes of real time because there was a lot of fouls. I know Kentucky fans are bent over the fact that Georgia doubled them up at the foul line, 38-19. Whatever, Georgia was the better team in this game. It's the best start for the Bulldogs since 2001-2002. They are 13-2. This was only the second win against a top 90 opponent for Mike White's team, but it was pretty critical. Again, you get them on your home floor. You get that done. And by the way, Kentucky and its 2 previous trips to Stegman was unranked, apparently. But yeah, Kentucky's, I think, lost 3 in a row in road trips against Georgia. So that's been a little bit of a bugaboo for them. And then credit to Rush the Court for this note. Kentucky has allowed 1+ point per possession for the 7th time in 8 games. So if you were really just to, remove a lot of context, this Kentucky team is very, very good on offense and a quality 3-point shooting team, and its defense is just okay. That's the issue they had a year ago. Now, this team looks much better than the team that they had last season under Calipari, even though that team was plenty good. But there are some similarities there, and I think Kentucky fans can't help but notice that. But Jackson Robinson didn't play well. Amari Williams, Andrew Carr, Kobe Brea, they didn't have good games. On the opposite end, Asa Newell, freshman, he looked good again, 17 points. And then Blue Kane, Silas Demery for Georgia combined for 29 overall, and helping them get over the Wildcats, who were just 6 of 25 from 3-point range. Your takeaway on that? I just,
I sort of mentioned it and tied it to Florida. I think what Florida just went through is something if maybe not all, but most good or great SEC teams are going to go through. Like, you're going to lose a game and then come back and get a massive win, or vice versa. And so here's Kentucky. You get a huge win over a top 10 team at home, and then you got to go on the road, and it's to a quote unranked team. So it doesn't feel like it's, you're at Auburn or at Alabama, but like Georgia's still good. I've got Georgia in the top 25-1 as of this morning, had them in before the weekend loss that they took. So this is for, I think, for weeks now been a borderline top 25-ish team. And it's not like Kentucky was massive favorites there anyway. And so this is just going to be life in that league. If you don't understand how to deal with losing and get over it quickly, it's going to get tough, because I don't care how good you are, you're going to deal with stuff like this.
Yep, I thought it was a very, very important. Your point on Kentucky, well taken. We talked about the Wildcats plenty. We'll continue to do so. Georgia here, taking advantage of this moment, I thought was huge. I don't know if Georgia, again, it's kind of similar to Texas. I think Georgia's ceiling could be 6 or 7 in the league standings, and its floor could be 13 or 14. I'm not sure, but because its non-conference wasn't that great. But to get this win, I thought was pretty critical. One more SEC note: Missouri beat LSU. Why is that notable? It was the first time since March of 2023 the Missouri Tigers beat an SEC opponent. We got to talk Michigan-UCLA. It was all Michigan in the first half. Then, a few minutes before halftime, a few minutes after, UCLA was able to squeeze it, make it a tight game, and then Michigan ran them out, 94-75. I'll give you some stats and some thoughts after, but Nada has, I think this is about 80 seconds worth of audio This is about a minute after Mick Cronin's presser started last night. He tapped into last season's Mick Cronin. Let's go ahead and hear this.
So don't tell me you want to win. Like, just don't tell me you want to win. You won't start the game. Tyler Bilodeau gave up 12 points. 2 screens, he didn't say a word, 3s, and then he got dunked on 3 times. So don't tell me you want to win. We're soft. Yeah. Aside from, to be fair to you, obviously they have a unique skill set, the way they shoot the ball, but we're soft.
You obviously came back and took the lead. Do you feel like ran out of energy?
I have to run on the court to get guys to play hard. It's crazy, and it's every day. I'm tired of it. It's every day. I have the most energy of anybody at practice every day. I'm upset with everybody in that locker room, my assistant coaches and my players. I don't need to do anything else. I almost got 500 wins. I'm only 53. You think I'm coaching the Lakers? It's a joke. It's a joke. But yet I come in and I have more passion and energy and pride than everybody, and that's the problem. It's just that is the truth right now.
I don't. There's more. We're not going to play more. I don't need to give you. But there is more. Your reaction to Cronin and everything that by the way, not a good touch on the curb music there. I don't know. To me, it feels like maybe it's a little too much, but
first off, it's hilarious. All right,
hilarious. Man. You think I was coaching the Lakers? What?
If he's coaching the Lakers, like, I'd love to see Mick Cronin coach the Lakers. I don't think there'd be anything funnier than Mick Cronin coaching the Lakers. It's hilarious, so I'm gonna laugh at it, but I don't know if it plays the right way. Like, we'll see. If UCLA turns things around, then people will point to this, and it'll be like, after they got blasted by Michigan at home, Mick Cronin said what he did, and it really sparked the whatever. Right. But like this can also, you can lose guys with this type of stuff as well. It's why coaches often don't do this. I can remember one time when Lionel Highlands was coaching the Grizzlies, and Zach Randolph was a problem. It was clear, everybody behind the scenes knew that Zach was being a problem because Lionel was trying to bring him off the bench, and Zach was not. Zach would always say the right things in the media, but everybody knew he was a problem behind the scenes. And I remember asking Lionel privately, I don't think he'd mind me saying this, like, why don't you ever just like call that out? Like, when people ask you about Zach, why don't you say, well, like, here's the problem. Like, we're paying this guy a lot of money, but he's not being professional. He's not taking on the role and blah, blah, blah. He's like, because if I say that to you, yeah, it'll be the truth and you'll be happy with me. But now I got to deal with it in the locker room. Now I got to go handle that. And it's just not a problem worth handling. So I just say what I say and try to keep it moving. That's among the reasons coaches don't normally do stuff like this. I know college is different than the NBA, but the Bilodeau stuff, that's pretty harsh. That's very personal basketball related stuff with a name attached to it. The reason we're talking about it now is because you don't hear that too often from college basketball coaches.
I love the honesty. I will take this every single time because 9 out of 10 times, if not more frequent than that, coaches are not going to give you the unfiltered at a presser. I love these moments. Cronin did this a lot last season, a lot, and that was a bad season. Now, context here is UCLA has lost 3 out of 4 games. Its one win was the win over Gonzaga just before New Year's Eve, and so he's trying to keep them on the straight and narrow. We'll see if it winds up working or not. On the Michigan side, man, they made 15 threes. What's wild is UCLA only had 6 turnovers in the game. Michigan had 16 and it still won. It just ran away with it. It made 15 threes. UCLA only had 2 trays in this game. Vlad Golden, 36 points in this one. He was tremendous. And then Trey Donaldson came up when Michigan was really pulling away in the second half. Donaldson was the guy who was coming up big. He had 6 threes himself, 20 points overall. Michigan is 4-0 in the Big Ten. And it's now the number 1 2-point shooting team in the entire country. Dusty May's got a really good squad there. Ranked 22 right now in the AP rankings, but looking every bit the part of a top 15 kind of team. 2 programs in the Big Ten that we thought or might still think have the capacity to win it. But, man, Michigan went in. And before we continue to do a quick tour around before we get out of here, I just want to okay.
I'm just going to say this real quick because I was thinking of this. I just couldn't pull it. But as I'm talking about Mick and what he did last night, I was like, there was another coach who did this recently, and it actually did turn his team around, and he got applauded for it in hindsight, somewhat criticized for it in real time, but applauded for it in hindsight because it seemed to do what he was trying to do, at least on some level. Rick Pitino last year at St. John's, Ed pointed it out in the chat. Rick got very personal, naming players in a critical way in a post-game press conference. And after that, like, St. John's started playing better and got itself an NCAA tournament contention. So, if this works like that, then job well done. But it's just an unusual approach for a high major basketball coach.
Before we do a few more results here, I do want to at least mention and acknowledge the fact that we have a huge news story happening in our country right now, and quite literally anyone that would be affected by it, rightfully so, is not listening to this podcast, but want to send our very best to anyone that is remotely impacted by these insanely scary and damaging and still ongoing wildfires in California and greater Los Angeles. This game, although it went on as scheduled, there was a brief moment I was told by one of the sources connected to the game yesterday that they were wondering if they were going to have to push it. They wound up not having to do it. Westwood is not exactly next to where the fires were, but it's not that far as well. So the images are horrifying, and the damage probably going to be in the billions. Really, really scary stuff. So I wanted to at least acknowledge that, because this is an ongoing news story in real time as we pod this morning. And it just so happened that there was a ranked on ranked matchup happening all but a few miles of where where woods and homes and buildings and everything continued to burn on Tuesday night. In much less important news, let's just quickly wrap up here before we look ahead. GP's got his Memphis show coming up shortly. In the Big 12, Arizona won against West Virginia. They were able to get out of their easternmost road swing of the season 2-0. They beat ranked Cincinnati, and then they beat ranked West Virginia on Tuesday night. That was a nice development for the Wildcats. Again, West Virginia doesn't have Tucker DeVries and won't have him presumably for the foreseeable future there. We wait and see on the ears, but good stuff from Arizona, and maybe, just maybe, they can swing around, and if not be the number 1 or number 2 team in the Big 12, maybe compete with Kansas and those likes to be for that 3 spot. We'll wait and see some good developments there. Baylor had no issues with Cincinnati. I thought that was an important win. That was a home win for Baylor. They won 68-48. It was the best defensive performance they put on the whole season. BJ Edgecombe had 18 points. They really had some good developments there. And then Texas Tech won at BYU. I thought that was an under the radar quality win for a Texas Tech team that still finding itself, not sure of its identity overall. A quality win there. And then in the ACC, credit to Louisville. It beats Clemson. 5 wins in a row for Louisville, 4-1 in the ACC. Javon Hadley was a stud last night. 32 points, 10 boards, 4 assists. He was really, really good. Quality game for the Cardinals. Pat Kelsey getting it done. After you and I, not so long ago, just kind of said, well, maybe this will just kind of be something of a whatever year. Maybe it won't be. Maybe Louisville really will find something and have a chance here. I know Cardinals fans are really excited, and you should be, because it's been a nice about face in the past couple of weeks. And then if we're going to talk about Carolina with its issues, I at least want to mention the fact that it had no problems whatsoever with SMU. Exactly what you want to see. Home game, 82-67. RJ Davis with 26. Nice to see. Drake Powell, a freshman, goes for 17. Seth Trimble returned. So a nice win for Carolina as well. There was more, but those seemed like the most relevant results on what was obviously a very populated Tuesday night in college hoops.
All right. Looking ahead to the next 2 days, not the busiest of schedules, but we do have some notable games. On Wednesday night, UConn at Villanova, Ole Miss at Arkansas, Texas A&M at Oklahoma. Let me stop here for a second, because I'm going to ask you a question that I was asked last night on Inside College Basketball, CBS Sports Network, and it sounded like an absurd question when I heard it. But then as you start going through it, it's like, maybe. Here's the question. Is Eric Dixon the best front court player in the Big East since Doug McDermott?
Oh, man.
It sounds absurd, but start thinking.
So we're looking at 9 years since the best. I mean, first of all, Dixon's been tremendous, and some of that.
Did you know how tremendous exactly?
I've been following it, and statistically, I think he's one of the 5 best players in the sport since the best big since McDermott.
Let me just put some numbers on it for folks because I think these numbers would surprise folks. Villanova, big brand in the sport, but kind of off the national radar because they just haven't been very good. Eric Dixon right now is averaging 25.9 points, 5.4 rebounds, 2.2 assists per game, shooting 53.4% from the field and 49% from 3 on 7 attempts per game from beyond the arc. As a freshman, he didn't take threes. I mean, not even one a game. And as a 5th-year player, he's now taking 7 a game, making 49% of them, and averaging 25.9 points per game. It's not all the time that we have a power conference player lead the country in scoring, but Eric Dixon at Villanova is doing it right now.
How about that? He's got a good case. Other notable bigs in the Big East.
Just to be clear, I didn't say big as much as I said front court player because I don't want to get into an argument about who's a big and who's not.
Okay, fair enough. Sonogo, obviously.
That name popped in my head.
Sonogo was really good. Who else? I don't know, GP. That's a good question. Angel Delgado was really good at Seton Hall, but a different kind of big. It's a good question, and there's a real chance that I'll tell you what. At worst, he's in the top 3, and he's been terrific. And we'll see on Villanova if it can really surprise us, and it's winning as of late. I mean, it's lost once since Thanksgiving weekend or week. So here it is with a good opportunity at home Wednesday night against UConn. Other games of note: Texas A&M at Oklahoma. Oklahoma on its home floor. That's interesting. Ole Miss at Arkansas. Alabama at South Carolina. The Nick Pringle revenge game, played for Bama last season and transferred to South Carolina. I know that's at front of your mind, GP. Penn State, Illinois is interesting as well. That's Wednesday. What do we got on tap for Thursday?
Oregon at Ohio State. Classic Big Ten matchup. Purdue at Rutgers. Buddy Rutgers.
Oregon, Ohio State they literally just played in football. He said that, just put 2 and 2 together.
Well, man, I hope this.
How do they work?
I hope this goes better for the Ducks than that one did.
Will it? Hold on. Let's do it right now. Or what was the final score of that game? Oregon, Ohio State.
It was Ohio State a lot, and Oregon didn't
41-20
have
or something like that.
Yeah,
41-21. So a 20-point margin. 20-point margin. Yeah, that's gonna be closer. This is gonna be closer. There's no chance.
I think the basketball Ducks will stay closer to the basketball Buckeyes than the football
They should,
Ducks.
because the basketball Buckeyes on Monday night won in double overtime at Minnesota after Minnesota fouled up 2 with 6 seconds to go in the first overtime.
Well, they should not have done that.
It was tough scenes. That
is not something they should. I would have advised against that if anybody would have asked. I would have said, don't do that. Oregon at Ohio State, Purdue at Rutgers, Washington at Michigan State. Another classic Big Ten matchup.
Oh, it's classic. We love it. Rutgers leads the court report today. We'll talk more about it on the Friday show, regardless of what goes down. Rutgers win or loss against Purdue, but they've been a big letdown, and we've never seen a team with under the presumption that Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey will both be top 5 draft picks, which is the way it's tracking. Never has a team with 2 top 5 picks on the roster been this much of a letdown. So you can read more about that in Wednesday's court report if you're listening to this well after the fact, or we'll get into a little bit more of what I found and the state of Rutgers, win or lose, on Friday's show. But after a very packed Tuesday, solid Wednesday, solid Thursday, but not nearly as populated before. Obviously, we get to the weekend and we're rolling big and heavy. GP, hell of a show here. I mean, this technical difficulties left and right.
Yes.
You were obviously the fact that we can get out of here, but I mean, I could not help but chuckle. And I know you could too, because you know what? The one thing you're good at is not taking yourself too seriously, laughing at yourself. The fact that you were like, I just don't understand why people wouldn't at least maybe consider that Tennessee right now is the best team. You tried to you tried to bully me into saying it, and I wouldn't do it. And then they go out and lose by 30. I
knew they might lose when I said it. I didn't consider that it could be by 30. It didn't strike me that it could be by 30. I believed in Sagai Ziegler a little more than that.
Oh man,
I never been let down by a Sagai Ziegler more in my entire life.
Oh, real quick before we get out of here, because I haven't looked, and if you said it, sorry, I forgot. Who knows what happened in the first 7 minutes of the show?
Yeah.
Where is Tennessee in your rankings now this morning?
I dropped them down to 7.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Well, you start going through the resumes, and then you consider that they just lost by 30. I think 7 is reasonable. You could put them a little higher, a little lower, but 7 felt fine to me.
All right, that's a show.
That's a show. Let's call that a show. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle. He's a legend. Shouts to Huck Larnell. Shouts to personal hotspots. We would not have gotten through this without a personal hotspot.
Oh, man.
Shouts to personal hotspots. If you're not subscribed to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. More of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. So do that. We'll talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.